Your marine starting battery is quietly inflating its own headline number by about 25%, and it's completely legal. That's number 8 on this list of marine-grade products that are really just regular hardware wearing a blue label. 8 things you get taxed on for the fear of salt water, and then the 4 places where that exact same fear is the only thing keeping your boat off the bottom. Here's what took me a long time to accept. The phrase marine grade has no legal definition. Nobody regulates it, nobody certifies it, and any factory on Earth can print those 2 words on any box. So the whole aisle splits into 2 piles. One pile is real engineering that costs more for an actual reason. The other pile is ordinary hardware, dyed blue, and marked up 200, sometimes 300%. Today we pull them apart. By the end you'll know the 8 blue label taxes to stop paying, the 4 places you should never cheap out because it sinks or burns boats, and the one question that ends the argument at the counter. So, number 8, the marine battery. You've stood in that aisle. The marine battery costs more than the car battery sitting right beside it, but it also wears a bigger cranking number, so it feels stronger in your hand. Now here's the reveal. Cold cranking amps, the automotive spec, are measured at 0 degrees Fahrenheit. Marine cranking amps are measured at 32 degrees Fahrenheit, which is a warmer, easier test. Same battery, same lead, same everything inside. Warm it up for the test, and the number climbs by roughly 25%, because a battery pushes current more easily when it isn't freezing. So a battery bragging 1,000 marine cranking amps is really only around 800 cold cranking amps. It's the identical cell. The only thing that changed was the thermometer. And then the twist. Plenty of so-called marine starting batteries are just dual-purpose or deep cycle cores with a marine sticker slapped on and a friendlier number printed on the front. I'm not telling you to skip a real starting battery, you genuinely need one that's built to crank. But here's the tell that cuts through the whole game. Ignore the flashy cranking number and look at the reserve capacity and the amp hours instead, because that's the spec a relabel can't fake. I'm telling you, the headline number on the label is a costume. And once you know the trick, you'll never be fooled by a big shiny marine cranking figure again. Number 7. Marine-grade stainless hardware. And this one has a myth built right into it. The myth is a magnet. Somebody grabs a bolt, slaps a magnet on it, feels no pull and decides it's good marine stainless. But a magnet cannot tell the 2 grades apart, and that's the whole con. Real marine stainless is 316. The cheaper stuff is 304. Both are non-magnetic when they're annealed, so the magnet sticks to neither one, which means the test proves absolutely nothing. The only difference that actually matters is a metal called molybdenum. 316 carries 2 to 3% of it. 304 carries none at all. And that molybdenum is exactly what fights the chloride pitting that chews stainless apart in salt water. The numbers back it up. On the pitting resistance scale, 304 sits around 18 to 20, and 316 sits around 23 to 28. And in salt spray, testing the 316 lasts 3 to 5 times longer before it starts to corrode. 304 starts pitting at only about 100 parts of chloride per million, while 316 shrugs off closer to 2,000. And the real kicker, 316 only costs the maker somewhere between 10 and 40% more than 304, but the marine markup on the finished bolt is usually a whole lot fatter than that. So a magnet only catches the truly cheap magnetic 400 series stuff, but it will happily wave 304 through as if it were 316. So when a bin of bolts just says marine grade, it might quietly be 304, and you'd never know from the shine or from a magnet. The honest tell costs a few dollars. A molybdenum spot test kit puts 1 drop on the metal, and it darkens on 316 and stays pale on 304. That is the receipt. And yes, real 316 is genuinely worth paying for anywhere near salt water, so hold that thought, because it comes back later in a big way. Number 6. Marine grease. Pop the datasheet on a tub of marine grease. Then pop the sheet on a tub of quality automotive waterproof grease, and you will very often read the same 3 lines. Same NLGI2 consistency. Same lithium-complex or calcium sulfonate thickener. Same water washout rating from the same ASTM test. A lot of them even carry the identical GCLB certification, which is literally the automotive wheel bearing and chassis standard. So the grease packing your trailer hubs and the grease sold in the blue tube for your boat can be the exact same chemistry. Now, to be fair, a genuine calcium sulfonate grease is excellent around water, and I use one, but that's true whether the label says marine or not. And yes, I know how it sounds to spend a minute defending grease, but the datasheets don't lie. Read the thickener, read the washout number, glance at the dropping point. If they match the cheaper tub, you're paying for the font on the label. And here's the quiet truth the whole category dodges. No grease is actually waterproof. They all wash out eventually, so the marine promise on the front was always a bit of a stretch to begin with. Number 5. The marine fuse. And this one is almost funny. That little blade fuse in the marine grade pack, the flat one they call ATO or ATC or the round glass AGC, is the identical automotive fuse. Same body, same amp rating, same manufacturer in most cases. And here's the tell, you can check yourself in 10 seconds. Every marine fuse block on the market says it right there in the description, accepts standard blade fuses. So the fuse itself is pure tax. But stay with me, because there is a real worth your money part here, and it isn't the fuse, it's the holder. A sealed, splash-proof fuse block with tinned copper contacts genuinely earns its keep down in a wet bilge, where a bare automotive holder would corrode green in a season. So you are not crazy to spend on marine circuit protection. You're just spending on the wrong half if you buy the blue fuse and ignore the sealed block. Remember that word, sealed, because it's about to explain the entire list. Number 4, marine connectors, and this is our connect the dots moment, so pay attention. That marine butt connector, the little crimp barrel with the plastic collar, is the same tin-plated automotive connector underneath the color. But here's where the whole pattern finally shows its face. Look back at what we just did. The fuse metal was identical. The connector metal is identical. The grease spec was identical. Across every single one of them, the only thing that ever actually changed is whether the part is properly sealed and what it's genuinely made of, never the word printed on the box. So the connector worth buying is not the one stamped marine. It's the one stamped adhesive-lined, cross-linked polyolefin. That glue lining melts when you heat it and seals right around the wire so salt water can't wick inside, and that polyolefin won't burn the way cheap PVC tubing does. Pay for the sealing and pay for the material. Do not pay for the adjective. And if you've made it this far, you already get what this channel is about. It's not about telling you to buy nothing. It's about reading the spec they hoped you'd skip. So subscribe, because the aisle never runs out of blue labels. And while you're at it, tell me in the comments which marine product has been quietly taxing you the longest. I read them. Number 3, marine grade plywood. And I want to be honest up front, real marine plywood is a genuine thing, not a scam. The British Standard 1088 demands a void-free core and fully waterproof phenolic glue, and for an actual hull that matters enormously, because one hidden void becomes a rot pocket that delaminates underwater. But here's the tax. Marine grade, the retail phrase on a shelf tag, is unregulated, so a lumber yard can staple those words onto ordinary furniture or exterior ply that has never met that standard in its life. And even 1088 itself is a voluntary standard, so the stamp alone isn't a guarantee. It gets worse. People pay the marine markup, often 2 to 3 times the price. A sheet of interior ply that lands around $30 against a marine sheet at $90, $100, sometimes over $200, and they pay it for a dry cabinet or a bunk base that will never once touch water. And to be clear, the gap is real when it's real. Testers have submerged true 1088 against ordinary exterior ply, and by month 5 the cheap stuff was checking, swelling, and pulling apart at the voids while the marine sheet stayed intact. So the standard earns its money on a hull, but the retail sticker on a dry cabinet does not. So ask for the standard and the wood species, not the sticker. If the seller can't tell you it's 1088 or a real equivalent, it's furniture ply wearing a costume. And you're funding the costume. Number 2, and this one's quick, marine grade cable ties. The The little zip ties in the marine bag run a couple of times the price of the ones over in the building supply aisle. But the plain black UV-resistant ties from the hardware store survive on a boat just fine, because the black is the sun protection, and the sun is what kills a zip tie. Is the marine tie a touch better? Sometimes. Honestly, is it worth triple? That's your call. It's the smallest tax on this whole list, but I'm including it on purpose, because it's the exact same trick as everything else. A blue bag and a bigger number wrapped around a plain commodity. And number 1, the single biggest markup on this entire list, marine hull and stain cleaner. You have bought this bottle. Brown waterline stains, you spray on the blue marine cleaner, and they vanish like magic. Now, go open the safety data sheet, which every one of these products is legally required to publish, so this isn't me guessing. The active ingredient reads 5 to 10% oxalic acid. That's it. That's the whole trick. And oxalic acid is the very same stuff in the can of Barkeeper's Friend already sitting under your sink, and you can buy it in bulk for around $3 a pound. So let's run the arithmetic together. A quart of the branded marine cleaner runs about $16 to $20, and it holds maybe a couple of ounces of an acid that costs pennies. Mixing that identical strength yourself costs somewhere around 50 cents. That is not a marine product. That is rust remover with a boat printed on the label and a 30 times markup stapled to the price. Now, the one fair thing I'll give the branded stuff. Some come as a gel that clings to a vertical hull instead of running off, and that's a mild convenience. But it's a convenience, not chemistry. And a real caution before anyone runs off to mix a batch, oxalic acid is roughly 3,000 times more acidic than vinegar, so gloves and goggles are not optional. Still, the branding outlasted the chemistry by a mile, and that is precisely why it earns the number 1 spot. And that's the tax list. But I did not make this to turn you into the guy who cheaps out on everything, because that guy is the guy who sinks. It's the same tear-down digging that produced the grease stain guides in my own dry box. No sponsors, nobody paid to point you at a brand. So here's the other half, and honestly, it's the half that matters most. The 4 places where marine grade is dead real, where the fear of salt water is completely earned, and where saving $40 can cost you the entire boat. First, through hulls and seacocks, the fittings and valves that pass straight through your hull below the waterline. Never ever put hardware store brass here. Ordinary yellow brass is copper and zinc, and in salt water the zinc leaches right out of the alloy in a process called dezincification, which leaves behind a brittle pink porous shell of copper that snaps with a light touch. A surveyor once pulled an entire seacock off in his bare hand with almost no force at all. Another owner used a drain cleaner in a sink one Friday and came back Monday to find the boat sunk to the mast because the chemical had eaten straight through a cheap fitting. The correct materials are proper bronze, which is basically copper with no meaningful zinc in it, or dezincification-resistant DZR brass, or a rated composite like the reinforced nylon fittings. And the American Boat and Yacht Council standard, H27, says that entire assembly has to survive a 500-pound shove for 30 seconds without letting water in. A hardware store ball valve does not. Here's your quick visual tell. Brass looks yellow, bronze looks reddish, and any pink tint on a fitting means dezincification is already underway. And 2 more rules that live in the same standard and its international cousin: every below waterline hose gets double clamps, and metal fittings get bonded back to your sacrificial anode so the zinc corrodes instead of the valve. This is the one that literally keeps the ocean on the outside of the boat, so this is the last place on Earth to save $40. Second, fuel hose. The hose in your fuel system has to be a Coast Guard type, and for the line between the fuel pump and the carburetor it has to be type A1. That rating is not decoration. It means the hose passed a 2.5-minute open flame fire test and a strict permeation limit, both written into federal law at 33 CFR 183. Automotive fuel hose passes neither. It isn't fire tested, and it lets far more fuel vapor seep out through the wall, and that vapor is what pools in a bilge and waits. That's the reason real marine fuel hose is noticeably heavier than automotive hose of the same inside diameter it has to be to pass the burn. And there's a newer, tighter version worth knowing, the 115, which cuts permeation from the old 100 grams down to just 15. One more distinction that saves lives. The Type B hoses are not fire-tested at all, so they only belong outside the engine room, never on the pump-to-carburetor run. So when a hose reads USCG Type A1 stamped every foot, that blue tax is completely real. And it's the difference between a small leak and a fire you cannot outrun on the water. Never substitute the auto parts hose here to save a few dollars. Third, the wiring. And here's where I'm going to be precise, because your sharper viewers absolutely will be. Contrary to a very popular myth, the standards body does not flatly mandate tinned wire. What the Marine Electrical Standard E11 actually calls for is stranded, boat-rated cable built to the UL 1426 spec, with a fuse installed within 7 inches of the battery. What you must never use is solid household Romex or thin automotive wire. Bare copper wicks corrosion for inches back under the jacket turns a clean connection into a hot, high-resistance one. And a hot connection sitting near fuel is exactly how boats catch fire. Now on top of that, automotive wire is sized differently and can carry 10 to 15% less copper than the boat cable equivalent, which quietly starves your pumps and motors over a long run. Tinned wire is the better engineered default, and I'd personally use it every single time, but the honest hard line is this: stranded boat cable, properly sealed at the ends and fused close to the battery. The tinning is the upgrade, but the sealing and the stranding are the rule. And fourth, ignition-protected gear on gasoline inboards and stern drives. That's the starters, the alternators, the fuel pumps, and the blowers living inside an enclosed engine box. Those parts spark by design, and alternator's brushes throw tiny sparks every time it charges. That's just normal. But gasoline vapor is heavier than air and pools in the bilge, so an automotive starter in that enclosed box is a spark sitting right next to a fuel and air mixture, which is an explosion waiting for one bad day. The marine versions are sealed and tested specifically to contain that spark, and they're certified to SAEJ 1171 or UL 1500, a standard so strict the part gets tested 50 times over. This is exactly why an outboard hanging out in open air doesn't care, but an inboard gas boat with a closed engine compartment absolutely does. So, on an enclosed gas engine, never drop in the auto parts alternator to save a few bucks, because that is the one substitution that can take the boat and everyone on it. And a free habit that costs nothing: run the bilge blower for a few minutes before you ever turn the key, because clearing the vapor is half the battle no fuse can fight for you. So here's the whole thing in a single line. Marine grade is not a standard. It's a marketing word, and your entire job is to read the spec sitting underneath it instead of the color printed on the box. The tax items give themselves away the second you check a data sheet, a safety sheet, or a fuse block description. And the real ones announce themselves with an actual standard: a bronze alloy, a fire rating, a Coast Guard type, a spot test drop that darkens. So learn to ask one single question at the counter: what standard does this meet? And watch how fast the blue label falls apart in front of you. You don't need to fear the saltwater. You just need to learn to read. One last thing. Nobody sponsors this. No dealer pays me, which is why those guides exist. The $50 Fix Bible walks the fuel line and bilge wiring with real part numbers. A shop bill's a few hundred. This is $20 once. You already got today's fix free. Scan the code on screen or grab the link below. Next time I'm tearing straight into the fish finder aisle, where a fistful of big-name brands quietly run the exact same sonar chip behind different screens and wildly different price tags. If reading the spec instead of the label saved you $1 today, drop the marine product that fooled you the longest down in the comments. I'll be in there reading them. YouTube thinks you'll like this next video, so go click it. And if you made it all the way to the end, do the smart thing and subscribe.